UFC veteran, old family first fan.
Welcome to the 18th episode of the MMA Podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. For the first time in a while, we actually didn't have a fight this past weekend, but we still got tons to talk about on the MMA landscape. For one, UFC is going to add a women's division. That's huge. A lot of fights scheduled for UFC 155 in particular. Anderson finally saying he might face Jon Jones at a catchweight. And we actually have a couple guests this week, and it's been a while since switching over to Ustream. We're going to have current Ultimate Fighter contestant Bristol Marunde on in about 5 minutes, and TJ DeSantis from Sherdog at the top of the next hour. So let's do it.
Let's do it. Mama. We did it for the love of the game. We did it, mama. I did it for. Yes, sir. Mama. The game will never be the same. We did it, mama. I did it for.
And big shout out as always to Smoke Serpent, Eddie Bravo, who is a part of that band. We actually had him on, I think the 7th or 8th episode. Said we could use it. If you haven't heard that episode, definitely check it out. Also to our listeners, obviously, we get nothing but positive feedback, which I can't grasp whatsoever. And obviously to Bristol Marunde and TJ DeSantis, like I said during the intro, we're going to be calling up Bristol in literally about 2 or 3 minutes. And TJ DeSantis from the hugely popular MMA site Sherdog, we're going to call him at the top of the next hour. So in radio lingo, that's in about an hour and a couple minutes. Also big ups to our partners at MMA Mental, Ray and Patrick, who we do our Monday Roundtable show with every 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. I worded that horribly. And if you want to call in, 213-457-3380. We won't be taking any calls during the Bristol interview, but we will be taking them after either interview. So if you want to chat with us, we had a caller last week who had pretty interesting takes on Big Nog versus Herman. He'll probably call us back, and if you would like to as well, that number again is 213-457-3380. You can tweet us at the MMA Podcast. I have the Twitter up, so if you'd rather not call in, you can just tweet us and I'll read that on air, and we all can respond to that. You can tweet back if you'd like. You can visit our website, themmapodcast.com. And as always, we do this every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific. I usually don't go through every time zone, but that time I felt like I fucking needed to. What's up, Chris?
What is it on black time?
On black time, is that a racist term? Are you talking about Africa?
Africa. I was just gonna say, you know how typically out there, there's this running joke that black people are half an hour to an hour late. So I was gonna ask you what that would be.
Half an hour to an hour late, I guess. And actually, if you guys weren't aware, in a week and a half, this coming Sunday, November 2nd, mark your calendars, don't forget to set your clocks back an hour. You're going to get an extra hour of sleep that Sunday night. I don't know what I'm going to do with that extra hour yet. I think I'm going to spend it furiously pooping or masturbating or both. I might cycle back and forth every 5 minutes.
Yeah, give yourself a Blumpkin with a fleshlight.
And I really hope our guest, Bristol Marunde, isn't listening, but if he is, we're about to call him up. Like I said, current contestant on The Ultimate Fighter, actually probably has the most experience of that entire crew. You rarely see a fighter go from a main card of a well-known promotion to The Ultimate Fighter. You know, usually they're fighting in leagues a little further down. But Bristol Marunde, his last fight was actually against Jacare Souza. He was a late fight replacement for Derek Brunson. We'll definitely make sure to ask him about that. We told him we'd call him up about 5 minutes into the show. So you have anything to say before we ring him up?
Can't wait.
Awesome. And let me dial him up. I won't read his number out loud like I almost did I forget who it was, but I started reading the number. I think I don't know. It may have been Lieben, but I started reading it, and no. It was Ian McCall. I started reading it, and you were like, no. I was like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't read that out loud on the air. But yeah, let's call up Bristol and see how he's doing. Should be getting a ringaroo little bit right here.
Bristol.
Hey, Bristol, how's it going? It's Jake and Chris from the MMA Podcast.
Hey, buddy, what's up?
Not much. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Just staying busy.
Yeah. I always thought it must be a really weird place for Ultimate Fighter contestants, especially when they're in between being on the show, but the finale hasn't come out yet, so they can't really divulge much information. But I'm sure either way, you're training. You training up in Washington or?
No, actually, I live in Las Vegas.
Oh wow, yeah, I knew you came up in Washington and do a little promotion up in Washington. Yep. Before we get into our questions, you still go up into Washington and promote up there?
Yeah, I stay real active up there. It's where I grew up outside of Seattle, and I have a lot of roots there, so continue to do business there.
Cool, yeah, we've actually had John Albert and Jeff Hoagland on, who I know both have Washington roots. Are you ever trained with those guys?
No, actually I haven't. They're a little smaller, but I know who they are, and I'm familiar with their gyms, and so it's good.
Yeah,
the Northwest has a lot of tough fighters.
Yeah, I know when we had Albert on, he was talking about his coach, Dennis Hallman, and I know you fought with him in the IFL, and we'll get to a question about the old Seattle Tiger Sharks in a little bit, but really the first question that pops in my mind, it seems like every MMA fighter we've had on is, extremely, seems extremely intelligent, is well spoken. Yeah. Yet they have, such a savage occupation. Your job is to go out into a cage and beat people up. What initially got you into the sport of mixed martial arts?
My older brother actually really insisted that I try it. This was back in 2004. He was a professional strongman and an athlete himself, and he had watched a few fights. We've seen the UFCs in the early days, and I'm a pretty calm guy. I was never in street fights, and so I probably never would have came up with the idea myself to try MMA. So it was really my older brother that pushed me into the sport, and I tried it, and I started training when I was going to school in Washington State University. I just found people to train with and just kind of did the whole self-training. Found people that knew more than I did, which wasn't much, but I signed up, and like 6 months later, I traveled over to Seattle and fought, and it was pretty nerve-wracking to go to a fight. I'd never been to a live fight or seen one live until I went to one and competed.
Cool. Yeah. When you started training, did you have competition, like fighting other people in mind, or did it just kind of turn out like, hey, I'm getting pretty good at this, I should compete?
And there we go.
Looks like we lost him there. The connection's still there. I'll see if we can call him back. We got a little rough connection, seems like.
Hey, sorry about that. Lost you there. When your question was, how when I started fighting was, how did the ball start rolling?
Yeah. A lot of guys say they usually start training without the objective to actually fight people, but after a while they start progressing along. Did it start with something that you knew you were going to compete, or did it just turn into that?
No, I started training to fight right away. I wanted to compete, and I wanted to, really test myself. And there's no better way to test what you're made of than to step in the cage, fighting another grown man.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Chris, the co-host. Bristol, I just wanted to thank you for coming on, man. It's a pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you guys. And, I just wanted to bring up the IFL. Me personally, I saw one UFC to start off my, MMA viewing. But shortly thereafter, I started watching the IFL. It was on local television out here in Los Angeles. And I just wanted to ask you, you fought for the Seattle Tiger Sharks in the IFL. And, you took on Dennis Hallman, and I wanted to ask you, what did you take out of that experience, and what was it like fighting on a team? Because that hasn't been replicated since, as far as I know. So I just wanted to ask your experience on that.
The experience was, it was actually kind of a rough one for me. It was a lot of learning. I had only a couple of fights, and so that team atmosphere, the way that it was set up, I was facing pretty veteran fighters. So, like Benji Raddick and Matt Horwich, I was fighting them off of only a couple of fights, and they had a lot of experience. So for me, I probably was thrown in a little early for my experience in the fight game. But, there's nothing, more, learning trial by fire is one way to learn. And I suffered some losses and had to learn the hard way, I guess. But what it taught me was that you have to be prepared. You can't just be a part-time fighter and expect it to be successful. MMA is MMA is a full-time job with oftentimes a part-time pay. But it takes a full-time effort to be successful.
That it does, and you're so right. These part-time fighters out there, you have guys like Mike Russo, who is still a cop, and he's training, as much as he can, and he has a daughter. You're right. It's these guys out there. They have these other occupations or things they're doing, and I don't know how they do it personally. I mean, I've never fought, but to have that kind of thing going on, I want to ask you: do you guys in the IFL? Did you guys actually train together as a team, or were you just brought in for the event itself?
No, we trained together every day. And Maurice Smith, our coach, and he would come to practice and, make us jump rope and kickbox forever. We always wanted to do more ground, pretty partial to the stand-up game. So trained together as a team, and it was an interesting experience. We, learned a lot about fighting, and the whole IFL model, I think they're a little ahead of their time. They probably spent too much money, like every promotion does, that's failed. But I think they were ahead of their time. If they would come out now, they might be able to make a run for it.
I think you're right. That was a very intriguing thing. I was always like, for me, I don't watch any other sports personally. I'm a combat sports guy only. But to have this team, aspect to it, I thought it was very intriguing. You're absolutely right about that. I wanted to ask you, training with Maurice, did you learn a lot kickboxing-wise? Because I know mixed martial arts, there's so many skills involved. Yeah. But to have Maurice there to train, to tell you what he knows, did you learn a lot in that aspect?
Yeah, I did. And I learned a lot about the sport, and he has an interesting training style. He's pretty unique to himself, and so it wasn't like all fun and games. We didn't get along, the best. Maurice and I, we kind of butted heads a lot, and just because he comes from a different old school mentality, and I have that wrestler mentality, and he's old school kickboxing. But we did learn a lot from him, and he taught us to play the game, and that was his thing: is always play smart, and that fighting's a game. And you need to play it more strategically and smarter than your opponent.
Absolutely. I completely understand, man. I'm sure you learned how to do some leg kicks from Mr. Smith.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Bristol, I know you've probably told the story a million times, but it really kind of bears repeating. When you were living back in Washington, you helped apprehend a rapist who had broken into your neighbor's apartment. Could you walk us through that wild story?
Yeah, it was crazy, man. I was getting ready for bed, and it was 11:30 at night, and I heard my neighbor screaming for help. I could hear the fear in her voice, and it really, frightened me. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I thought somebody was getting murdered, just by the sound of it. It was sheer panic, and I opened my front door, and this big guy came running past me out of her apartment, and he ran out on the street, and I looked in, and she was laying on her back in her kitchen, just like paralyzed in fear, just frozen. And I don't know what possessed me, but I took off running after him down the street. I didn't have any shoes on or anything. I just it just kind of pissed me off, and to have this happen right next to me, and I wanted to go take this guy down, and so I chased him down. Long story short, I ran him down probably half a mile away, and ironically, we ended up in the corner of a really busy intersection in a gas station parking lot, and I told him to stop, and I could tell this guy obviously wanted to get away. And I was like, you're not going anywhere, buddy. And he kind of put his hands up like he wanted to fight. And right then I just launched a giant head kick and took him out. And he fell right to his back. He got up all disoriented, and I grabbed him by his collar and threw him down on his back, knocked the wind out of him, and I just held my hand over his face like in a fist. And I looked right at him. I was like, if you move, I'm going to kill you. And he just froze. He didn't move. And, there was a lot of traffic, and people were watching this. So there was probably like 10 or 15 people all on their cell phones calling the cops, standing around watching it. And so it wasn't very long until the cops showed up and took him down and arrested him. They came screeching their tires in. It was fun. It was like a movie. They came barreling in that parking lot and guns out, everything. And then it turns out that, he'd been wanted for multiple felonies and
wow, yeah, that's a really wild. Oh, looks like we lost him again.
Right when shit's getting good.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get him back on the horn. I don't know if it's on his end or our end. Either way, we're calling him right back.
Assuming it's cell phone reception.
Yeah. Hey, we got you back.
Marunde. Please leave a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Oh, there he is. He's calling back. We got you back on the horn.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's BlackBerry. These phones have been crazy. I'm switching over to the iPhone here pretty quick, so I'm going to conform.
Yeah, son.
Yeah, but
long story short is, I took this guy down, and he was arrested, and the chief of police and the mayor of Bellevue, Washington, all gave me like an outstanding citizen award, and the guy is probably still in prison. The guy went away for a long time.
That's awesome. Yeah, my favorite part, I listened to you explain it on a interview before, but just wanted our listeners to hear it as well. Mm-hmm. My favorite part was you talking about landing that beautiful head kick, and that you had yet to replicate it in the cage.
Right.
What was it like? The feeling when you knew you had just connected and taken the dude out.
Dude, it happened so fast. I can't even believe I launched it, man. I was just standing there and just threw this giant head kick, and it just smacked him right in the face. It was like, it wasn't like shin across the neck. It was like straight foot on the face, like a big old slap.
Oh!
And the guy he just did not see it coming. He was so surprised.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, was it Crow Cop Gonzaga-esque, where Gonzaga landed a giant head kick and he just crumpled? Was it kind of like that?
His BlackBerry seems to be having all sorts of issues. We'll try it one last time. Man,
This is Bristol Marunde. Please leave a message.
I officially hate blackberries.
Bristol, where's a landline?
Yeah,
Find
right?
a local landline.
Yeah. I don't know if landlines exist anymore, man. I don't know if I've seen a landline except to, like, offices and stuff.
Find a payphone and call us collect.
Call us collect. We will accept all charges. I don't know if you can call collect on Skype, but I would be more than willing to talk to him. We'll try and call him back in a minute or so. I know we've got a ton of questions. There he is. Oh, he's actually calling from a different number. Thank the Lord. Hey, you calling us from a more reliable line, it looks like?
Yeah, certainly. I apologize. It's BlackBerry. I got on your house phone now. So, back to the story, man. That's where it all comes down to. Is I think that we need. I believe in a little bit of street justice.
Yeah,
sure
definitely.
Criticism for it, but I think we can't stand up. Or we can't put up with that in the neighborhoods.
No.
If we have the ability, let's take them out.
Yeah, when I first told Chris about this story, the first thing he said was, "God, we are such betas," and it's it's kind of true. Not everyone can land a Gonzaga-esque head kick, and it's really awesome hearing about a guy who trains, who just runs after this. It would be one thing if you were head kicking someone who was just spray painting the side of like a wall or something, but this is a dude who probably deserved a head kick and a lot more after that.
Yeah, definitely. But it was still satisfying. It felt good for sure. But I bet it was also kind of odd too, because I was given my police statement and I didn't have a shirt on. I didn't have shoes on, and I was out in the middle of a parking lot, and I was just shaking my head like, dude, this is like a classic Cops. The only thing I was missing was a mullet.
And you would have had a pretty sweet mullet landing that head kick. It would have been flowing in the wind. It would have looked great.
I know. That would have been a perfect scenario, but almost perfect.
Yeah, you know what? Much respect, everyone out there, our listeners. Bristol Marunde, cage fighter, woman saver, rapist head kicker. he's definitely a great guy. So I just wanted to get back to your MMA career here and give you some publicity on that. I wanted to talk about your win streak. You fought Shane Prim, beat him in M1, and then you fought Grisby, Moreno, and Jay Silva. And Prim and Silva are guys that I know very, very well. I mean, I watched Prim for an entire season. Jay Silva fought in the UFC against Lieben and I think Dalloway as well. And I just wanted to ask you, that win streak that you had, that 4-fight win streak, what led you to attain that? Was it a change in training, a change in mindset? Do you think it was just pure luck? I just wanted to kind of get inside your head as far as that goes.
It was part training, and part mindset. Was that came in to the fight game and I beat everybody up when I first started, and then I went through a rough time where I just I was fighting, but I had a lot of distractions. I graduated college and I continued to fight because I'm stubborn, and I didn't take any time off, and I got a couple losses, and but you got to learn. The fight game it can be, we can overcomplicate it with trying new techniques, and fighters do that. We suffer a loss and then we throw out everything that we know and we try everything new. But stick to what you're good at and keep the game simple. And just me working hard each day in practice, and my new trainer that I got for Matt here in Vegas, that was before the Prim fight, was Peter Pinto, and we're still working together. And things just started to come together, and just started believing in myself even more than ever. And it was just about, I knew I had the skill. It's just about going out and executing it. And I did that with Prim and these guys. And Chuck Grigsby is like 6'6". The guy's a giant, man, and he fights at heavyweight. So I'll fight anybody, and that's true because the promoters here in Vegas for the SEC where I had those fights, I was like, you just find me somebody that'll fight me and I'll fight him. And that's been my mentality. And it did get me in trouble because, when I first started, I still had that mentality. It was like, I'll fight anybody, I don't care. And, I got some losses from that, but it also makes me tougher. And, and then, Strikeforce called me after all those wins. Strikeforce calls me and says, you want to fight Jacare on like a week's notice? And of course I say, yeah, I'll fight anybody. Let's go. So, the mentality and the mindset is I'm a fighter and I'm going to show up to fight. And, you win some, you lose some, but I'm on a winning path and I'm going to continue to do that.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that you put it all together. You had a nice win streak, got the call. I just wanted to ask you real quick, your fight with Victor Moreno at Superior Cage Combat 2, you won by Kimura. I myself can't stand it when fans boo the ground game. I mean, if they're stalling, I don't care, because you know what? Ultimately, I love it just as much as stand-up, just as much as any other aspect. I wanted to ask you, you got a Kimura. You got it in the first round. I wanted to ask you how you latched it on and what exactly happened in that fight, because I think it'd be hard to find that fight online.
Right. He throws like really hard punches, and I think that's what he was trying to do, is knock me out. And we were exchanging, and he clipped me on the jaw, and it stunned me for a second, so I just shot a double leg right off the bat. It was, the plan B can happen real fast. So, my stand-up is going, I get hit, plan B is shoot a takedown. And I shot that takedown and got it, and I could feel his arm wrapped around my neck, the back of my neck. And so I just moved position and just squeezed him as tight as possible and secured that Kimura position, and I just cranked on it as hard as I could. And I felt it just release his grip, and I just bent it backwards as hard as I could. And I could hear him yelling in pain and tapping right away. So it's just that initial strength can scare a guy. Obviously it hurts, but when your shoulder bends backwards that fast, your first reaction is the tap, and that's really what I was going for, is get that first scared tap. And he did. And, I think the fans liked it too, because it was pretty quick and pretty powerful. So, it's probably I think that's like the only way I've submitted people. It's like my favorite submission is a Kimura, just because it kind of falls in line with everything I like. It's just all strength and power, and you can really power that submission.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people in the and police corps around the nation will, that's kind of their go-to ground move. We have a couple questions about the Jacare fight, and then a few about this current season of The Ultimate Fighter before we let you off of the hook. I wanted to ask you, you were a pretty late replacement for Derek Brunson in your last professional bout against Jacare Souza. What was the very first thing that went through your head when you found out that Jacare would be your next opponent?
I was busy at the time. I had my promotion that same night, so I hadn't been training. So that was my first thought, was like, man, this would come up at one of the few times that I haven't been training. That's, often how it works. But my first thought was that I can win this fight. This is a good chance for me to really be an underdog and get that big win. I still believe that I can beat him. I dropped a weight class down to welterweight, but at 85, going in there, I really felt that I had nothing to lose, and that for me this was a win-win situation, and that's really how I approached it, is that I'm going to go in there and look for the upset. Yeah,
taking the circumstances in and mine, you really performed well. You lasted longer than guys like Darren Brunson, who you actually replaced, guys like Matt Linland. What was it like actually being in the cage and competing against one of the world's top grapplers?
I really actually felt good, and I enjoyed it because in there I felt like, he was fast and he was extremely strong on top. I could feel his control was much better than anybody I'd ever fought. But at the same time, it did give me, a newfound confidence that, even on an off day, I can compete with this guy, and I hadn't been training, and I can come in on a week's notice and fight this guy and actually, take it in the third round. So, it was a confidence booster for me. Give me some training and, let's see what I can really do with a real camp, because I guarantee you, he had a lot better training for that fight than I did.
Yeah, not only that, but the dude, I've seen him pull himself up a rope with one arm, and that's why he's called the crocodile. Yeah. So, you did real well, man. I remember watching that fight, and I thought you did well. And I kind of wanted to move on to the Ultimate Fighter. Obviously, that's what everyone wants to know. We've asked you some other stuff, but you went into the house with a real considerable edge and experience, and a lot of those fighters would be kind of like pompous and shoving it in everyone's face, and you seem to kind of hold your cards close to your chest. How important do you think that experience that you had kind of was an advantage overall?
Yeah. Going into the house, I thought it would be a huge advantage, and being in the house, it was, the experience of fighting is kind of an advantage, but in a way it's kind of not, because everything is turned upside down in the Ultimate Fighter house, and nothing is normal. So I'm so used to having my trainers and my systems for getting ready for a fight, and so to go into the Ultimate Fighter, everything's different. So it was hard to adjust, actually, because I'm so used to a certain way and having, control over everything. In the house, you really don't have a whole lot of control. They tell you when to show up, and you don't find out who you're fighting until, a day and a half before. So the house is kind of an equalizer, and that's why sometimes guys win the Ultimate Fighter that aren't expected to, because there's a lot more factors than just fighting. And, I think, in my opinion, I don't think the producers are able to really capture that, or haven't been able to capture just the whole aspect of the show. You see a lot of, guys being jackasses and playing these dumb pranks and stuff, but in reality, it's a tough situation there. It actually is very difficult to fight and perform well under such adverse conditions.
Definitely. Sorry.
No, yeah. So so guys that go in there, there's just so many different personalities and fight abilities. Everybody's so different in there, and it seems like the guys that do well are the ones that don't let anything affect them, and they can turn all the outside noise off.
For sure. Yeah, that kind of segues into a question we posted up on the Underground, that we had you on the horn, and a guy by the name of Sandman's Coming For You wanted to know what part of living in the Ultimate Fighter house changed your normal training regimen the most when you were filming.
One of the things that changed was that normally I'd take a week or two off after I fight, and have that time to just relax and get away from the fight game. But in the house, we had to get right back to training. I think the multiple fights in a row is the most difficult thing, because the weight cut was pretty difficult. Doing multiple weight cuts within 2 weeks. So that was the hardest thing for me, was that I didn't have a whole lot of break in between fights to, get my weight back up and relax. And it was right back to work, because my next fight was, a week and a half, 2 weeks away.
Yeah, you cut 16 pounds in 24 hours, I believe, for your first fight in the house, fighting Team Nelson's Julian Lane. We all know it's extremely difficult to cut weight, but 16 pounds is a huge cut, especially for welterweight. Take us through your mindset of pushing yourself to get to 170 pounds.
Yeah, the weight cut was difficult. It's always difficult to cut weight, but that 16 pounds, that was already, I had already started cutting, and that was the all water weight that I cut off there. So it was, the day before it was probably 20 pounds at least. So the hardest part was not eating. Because in the house we can order whatever food we want, and it's delivered the next day. So all the other fighters were ordering food and all kinds of sweets and candy and all this stuff. So it was hard for me to not want to walk into the kitchen and open the fridge. There's 2 double fridges in there, and they were full of food. So it was hard to diet and not let myself pig out. Especially after I fought, I wanted just to eat and relax, but it was right back to the diet and right back into the gym.
For sure, yeah. During and after the fight, Julian Lane accused you of being overweight, even though a commissioned official verified you weighed in on target. And the show kind of showed their reactions and Roy Nelson's reaction and Dana White's reaction, but not too much of your reaction to those claims. But what do you think of those allegations?
Well, the funny thing was that I had no idea until I watched the show.
Wow!
I didn't know. I didn't know they were bitching about the weight because I just went and weighed in, and then I heard them talking, but I didn't care. I was so dehydrated that I just ignored them and went back to the room and started rehydrating. So, hey, but if they thought I was overweight, why didn't they bring it up then? I weighed the weight they called off. If they wanted to re-weigh me, they could have done it at that time. But why complain about it later? It just comes off as sour grapes.
Not only sour grapes, but I think they were just trying to make good TV. We all know reality TV. They like to focus on what would make an interesting show. So obviously, Bristol Marunde wasn't overweight. we can all agree on that. Dana White and Shane Carwin have they've really been up Roy Nelson's ass. They've been critical of him in the last few months. And do you think it was a considerable advantage to be on Team Carwin? I mean, did you want to be on Nelson or Team Carwin? I just wanted to get inside your head for that.
Right. I wanted to be on Team Carwin so bad, especially in the fight picks. I was crossing my fingers, please, Nelson, don't pick me. Look at his training and his just whole philosophies and the way he comes off to Dana. It's just not organized, and there's no method to the madness for Team Nelson, and you see that throughout the season. And I was really happy to be on Team Carwin. It was so organized. Every coach was an expert, and they cared about us and they wanted us to win. So was it an advantage on the show? Yeah, probably. But what we took from it was that we got way better coaching, and we learned a lot more on our team for sure.
I think you're right. I mean, I don't want to choose sides here, but it just seems that Carwin is more interested and is more genuine in his team than Nelson is. Nelson has that kind of pompous air to him where it's like, well, you're gonna do it my way or take the highway. And Carwin is the kind of guy that seems like I just want to help you and make you better.
Yeah, exactly, and that's how he approached it. And same with all the we had a good cast of assistant coaches that came in, and they really ran it like a full camp for us, which is cool. But Nelson brought in some names, and like the Diaz brothers came, and big deal. I mean, that's cool that they had celebrity UFC fighters come in, but what really makes fighters good is an organized practice, and that's not what he does for himself. So he's obviously not going to do it on the show either.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, that's true.
Definitely, yeah. I'm really glad we got you on. You definitely have the meanest stare down face in the entire house, and I swear to God, I'm not bullshitting you, but just based on your experience, you were actually my pick to win it all before we even got in contact. But if you do get a contract to fight in the UFC once this is all said and done, who would be, barring a title shot, because I know everyone's dream matchup is getting that chance to fight for the belt, but just as far as names go, who would be your dream matchup in the Ultimate Fighting Championship?
Oh man, in welterweight, there's a lot of good guys for me to fight. I think would be exciting. I personally would like to test myself against like John Fitch and Josh Koscheck. I think those guys are really good, and that would give me a couple fights in the UFC and give me somebody tough like that, maybe Johnny Hendricks, and I'd really like to pass that test. And I get through them, I'm sitting good in the UFC. And another guy would be Thiago Alves would be an awesome fight for me. I think I can beat those guys with the proper training, but my work is cut out for me for sure. And I hope the UFC, takes care of me and wants to push me and fight me a lot, because that's really what I want to do. Is I've been working and I've been busy with my fight promotions and all this stuff. I'd like to focus on fighting, with 100% of my time and my effort. And, up to this point, I haven't really been able to do that. And I've always had other jobs and things going, because I don't want to be living on a couch or bumming off somebody else as a fighter. And so I'd like to, I really want the money to make it worth it so I can focus 100% on fighting. And I think I have that chance with the Ultimate Fighter. And getting into the UFC, I think I really can make a good run for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Personally, just for the epic stare down, I would want to see you take on Diego Sanchez. But,
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, but without giving away any spoilers, you still training with anyone from the Ultimate Fighter House?
Not currently, but I have kept in touch with everybody, and that's the cool thing. Team Carwin is such a close group. We've all kept in contact with each other, and Carwin and Nate Marquardt and all the guys, have invited every one of us out to Colorado to work out with them. And, I'm planning a trip out there. We spent a lot of time together on that show, and we went through a lot together, and it definitely brings you together as a team, and as, friendships grow. So, just because the show only airs an hour a week, we were there 24/7, 24/7. So spending time together, we grew close. So we'll always have that bond that we went through it together, and we'll keep in touch forever, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's very well put. And I was thinking to myself, you were talking about with the right training, you could face these top guys. And I'd personally, after talking to you, I'd like to see you go up to Denver and train at Grudge with all these guys, Carwin and Marquardt. I think if you had that kind of day-to-day instruction, absolutely, you're only going to get better. And before I move on to our final question, I think that matchup for you that would make sense is based solely off of mean mugging would be Matt Brown. Have you ever seen Matt Brown? You know that guy, right? Can you imagine being nose to nose with that guy?
Oh my gosh, I know. We've trained together a lot. He comes to Vegas sometimes, and we always spar together, and I love it. Man, that guy, he is tough as nails, and that guy can bang on the feet like nobody's business.
Yeah, he's definitely a scary dude. On the Ultimate Fighter, he was serious, and he's had an up and down career in the UFC, but is absolutely fantastic.
He's doing good.
Final question, Mr. Marunde. This is serious.
Super serious.
Yeah. What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh my gosh, you hit a nerve there. I have a bad sweet tooth, and it's hard for me to decide what ice cream, because I probably have ice cream at least once a day, and I eat well, a strict diet, but I cheat every day. And I just gave up trying to, I just work with it now. So, I love chocolate, anything chocolate, man. So like Rocky Road or like Moose Tracks, anything. I'll eat the ice cream, man. If it's in the house, I'm gonna eat it. So I can't even bring ice cream into the house because I'll eat the whole thing.
Same here, brother. Same here, man. I'm right there. I'm all chocolate. I'm all peanut butter all day long.
All day, son. Yo, we really, really appreciate you coming on. We'll obviously be rooting you on during the future episodes of The Ultimate Fighter. But did you have any sponsors or shout-outs you wanted to throw out there before we let you go?
Yeah, I want to give a shout-out to my trainer, Peter Pinto. He's been working with me for the last couple of years, and we've grown a lot together as fighter and trainer. And I want to make him proud in the UFC as much as I want to win for myself. And I think nobody wants me to win more than he does. And that's who you need in your corner, somebody that wants you to win just as bad as you do.
Yeah, that's definitely the kind of person you want to have cornering you. It's kind of crazy seeing guys who will corner 50 different fighters, but those few guys who really specialize with one fighter. It's really awesome seeing that bond. But yo, Bristol, it was an absolute honor chatting with you. We hope maybe down the road after you win this season of The Ultimate Fighter, we could have you back. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Anytime.
All right, thanks a lot, Bristol.
Bye.
Take it easy. And that was Bristol Marunde, current contestant on this season's Ultimate Fighter, and obviously someone Chris and I will both be rooting on as the episodes progress.
What a wonderful human being, man.
Fucking awesome, dude. He head kicked a rapist. A Crow Cop Gonzaga style in his dumb rapist face. That's awesome. I was gonna mention, it probably sounds like total bullshit. Even Chris called me out on it when I was putting questions by him. He is like, "No, you didn't. You didn't have Bristol to win this season of The Ultimate Fighter." But it seems like, at least to me, that he is by far the most experienced guy. Hung in there until the third round with Jacare, and I don't think anyone else in that round in that house could last 3 rounds with Jacare Souza. So really cool dude.
I really, honestly, as far as his future in MMA or his career, bar none, just talking to the guy was awesome. I mean, what an honest, open, good human being. And it seems like we're shooting, we're batting 100, man. It's like every single time we swing that bat, we just hit a home run. We talk to these guys that are just fantastic people. He's an awesome dude.
Fucking I really enjoyed that interview. We actually chatted with him a while. We were chatting with him about 45 minutes. So we have another interview in about 10 minutes with Sherdog's TJ DeSantis. If you want to call, if you want to call in and chat with us in that short little 10 minute gap, you can call us at 213-457-3380. Please don't be mad if we have to kick you off when TJ calls us. Tweet us at the MMA Podcast. Shout out to our boy Sandman's coming for you on the Underdog, or the Underdog. Wow, the Underground, the Underdog. On the Underground, I really like that question about asking what was different from his normal resume and whatnot. But seeing as we don't have any callers yet, you wanna bust into the news?
I would love nothing more.
Let us do the news. And of course, I don't have the news theme queued up until now because I was talking to put it off. Yeah, there it goes. Probably the biggest news coming out of mixed martial arts the last week. Everyone's been talking about Jones Sonnen, but we broached that kind of ad nauseum last week. Just yesterday, I think it was yesterday and not Monday. This is a great pod. But Dana White came out and said the UFC was absolutely going to add a women's division. Hinted that all signs are pointing to Ronda Rousey kind of leading that charge. And it's about damn time. It was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, before that whole Carano Cyborg fight. Women's MMA was definitely far off in the horizon. It was kind of understandable for the UFC to not want to take on that whole division, but Rousey, especially her last 2 fights have really been pumped up against Tate and Kaufman, and a fight against Cyborg would be even more pumped up. I'm really glad we're seeing the addition of a women's division, as compared to the addition of a paperweight division or a cruiserweight or an open weight, a super heavyweight type division. And it's going to be interesting to see what the UFC does as far as belts, whether they'll more likely than not open up 2 divisions, a 135 and a 145, but we might see him open up a 125 too. I know there are a lot of very skilled 125-pound fighters. I think Megumi Fuji is leading the pack there, if I'm not mistaken. What do you think about this new addition to the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and when do you think it'll actually, Dana's saying it's absolutely going to happen, but he hasn't given us any time frames. I think most people are kind of expecting it to coincide with whenever Dana White and Showtime can get a deal figured out, but I've been talking for a few minutes about it. Blah, 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 blah. What do you think?
I'll tell you what, man. I'm talking about beating a dead horse ad nauseum.
Yeah, right.
I was a detractor of women's MMA initially. First time I saw a fight, it was with Strikeforce, and I was disgusted by it. Literally, I felt sick to my stomach, and I look back on that now and I go, that probably wasn't the best move. Women should have just an equal right to fight as men do, and when I look back on it, the reason I didn't like it was because I was socially programmed for that, and I think that's the biggest issue with most people out there. I think most of the general population aren't really ready for women's MMA. But that being said, I think with the right push by the UFC, with the right marketing, they can make it happen. And I think if anyone can do it, it's the UFC. They're the largest mixed martial arts promotion in the entire world. They know how to promote. They're in line with Fox. I think that this is the best thing that could have happened. I think that these women should get exposure. I mean, you have Miesha Tate, you have Ronda Rousey, Cyborg, you have all these big names, Fuji. Who's that chick from Bellator? Zoila Frosto, Gurgel. You have all these women out there that don't have the opportunities that men have, simply based off of, well, maybe the world isn't ready for it, and I think that's a cop out. I think that's BS. I can't wait to see it. And as far as when it's going to happen, I'm going to say probably a year. And as far as the divisions, I couldn't tell you. I think 145 is dominated by Cyborg. 135 is dominated by Rousey. I don't really see a 125 necessarily. So let's say initially, the way I see it, I think that 135 will be the only division to start off with. When they announce it, it's going to be 135 in the UFC, and I think they'll properly promote it.
Yeah, and if they only opened up a bantamweight women's division as compared to a bantamweight and a featherweight women's division, that would kind of force Cyborg to drop down to 135 pounds, assuming that Ronda Rousey did join the UFC. Especially after taking that PR hit after testing positive for a banned substance. Cyborg really, I think, needs this fight more than Ronda Rousey does. Do you think eventually when they're matched up against one another, it'll be at 135 pounds?
I honestly don't really know. I don't think that Cyborg, I think she can make the weight. Obviously, she's a woman, but I think mentally she doesn't want to do it. And if if it comes to a big payday in the UFC, of course she's going to drop 10 pounds. That's 10 pounds. You're a professional athlete. Of course she'll do it. It's just a matter of how much money, how much is Dana White, Joe Silva, and the Fertittas willing to pay Cyborg to drop down for that dream fight. I want it, you want it, the fans want it, so it comes down to how much money are they willing to take out of their pocket.
Definitely, and looking ahead to that fight, you know, it's really the fight that all mixed martial arts fans want to see in the UFC. You know, what do you see going down? Cyborg's famous for her early first round knockouts, and of course Rousey's even more famous for her early first round submissions. You know, personally, I see a Rousey submission. Actually, Carano got into the full guard of Cyborg, I believe, when they fought against one another. And yeah, if Gina Carano got into your full guard, I don't care how much you train, how much better you get. Ronda Rousey is more like a prodigy than anything else. She's absolutely incredible.
I think it's pretty simple. If Cyborg can keep the distance and she can keep Rousey at bay and use her striking, she will win. If it hits the ground or clinching position at any moment, Rousey will win. I think it's really as simple as that. Who can impose their game plan? And I know that's a tired cliche, but I really see that happening. I don't think Cyborg would know what's hitting her when an armbar gets snatched, like everyone else out there. But I also think that she has some really dangerous Muay Thai strikes. Ultimately, I'd like to see some VADA testing for this fight because I think Cyborg is juiced to the gills.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of a tricky situation. You know, you have a lot of male fighters who test positive, and a lot of people think they're juiced. But when females do it, I don't know. It almost feels sexist to accuse a female fighter of that. But I don't necessarily know if it's fair. You know, after one test, I remember listening to Rogan's podcast, and he had a doctor on who actually said that it was impossible for a female to achieve the frame that Cyborg achieved without taking banned substances. So she'll obviously be under a closer watch in her upcoming fights, whether they're in Strikeforce, the UFC, any other promotion. But yeah, she'll obviously be under tighter control as far as testing goes, and it'll be interesting to see how her performance reacts.
She's a scapegoat, bro. She's a scapegoat. If you look at it, she has looked that way for a long time. She looks like a man. That doesn't help her. When you have a woman like Rousey, who is built like a man, if you look at her arms and her frame, she's very large for a woman. She's still sexy, but she's very large. But then you look at Cyborg, she has a strong jawline, a huge head, and she's shredded. She's going to be a scapegoat, and I don't think that's right, but also, at the same time, she did pop for a banned substance, and Rousey hasn't, so it is what it is. I think that having closer guidelines for Cyborg is warranted simply based off of the fact that she's pissed hot.
Yeah, scapegoat's an amazing term to use, kind of like Barry Bonds. You know, people, I mean, it's kind of crazy. She is pointed at more when PEDs are brought up than people who have tested positive multiple times. Or you know, even there is not a single men's mixed martial artist who I can think of that is more of a pariah when it comes to PEDs than Cyborg, which I find absolutely insane.
Well, I don't find it insane at all. What it is just purely based off the fact that men can actually look that way naturally and women can't. So I disagree. I mean, I think it sucks for her, absolutely, but ultimately women shouldn't look like that.
I don't want to cut you off, but we have TJ calling in right now. Let me see if we can add him up. We got you on the horn, TJ?
That's me.
Thanks a bunch for coming on, man. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, no problem. Just quick, on the air. No formal, hello. We're going to be on the air in 2 minutes. Just boom, on the radio.
Boom. We are on.
How are you?
Yeah, we're doing good. We actually just had a pretty long interview with Bristol Marunde. He has a ton of interesting stories, both from being in the Ultimate Fighter house. I don't know if you've heard the story with him tracking down a rapist in boxer shorts and then head kicking the life out of him and holding him there before cops showed up. That's definitely a story that beats any story I think I ever could tell in my entire life.
I have dreams like that where I have to hold somebody down until the cops come and everything works out, but in real life, the cops had better come in like 45 seconds.
Right, yeah, I told Chris about that story a while ago when I was researching him, and the first thing he said is, "Jesus Christ, we are such betas." But yeah, it's
that's manly stuff. That's like manly on like the top shelf of manliness.
That is top shelf man shit.
Top shelf man.
But yeah, it's really awesome having you on. You know, you're obviously toward the top of the whole MMA media scene, working with Sherdog. Kind of take us through what it's like day by day working for an MMA giant like Sherdog.com.
It's a lot like hanging out in my spare bedroom. That's what I do. I don't leave the house. I'm a shut-in. My life's consumed by reading, various MMA websites, including Sherdog, but, the junkies out there, MMA fighting. We look at everything, trying to stay on top of everything, and, I get to deal with guys like Jeff Sherwood, Greg Savage, Jordan Breen on a daily basis, and it's kind of weird. I mean, in this space now, you get to work, in MMA media, but like I said, I'm hanging out at home, and it's very rare that I see my coworkers. I mean, I get to see Breen now, roughly 4 times a year because we do the Tachi Pals fight streams. But, I mean, I worked with Jordan for 4 years before I ever met him in person. So it's kind of surreal because it's like you work with people, but you don't really work with people. A guy like Mike Fridley's, who is our content editor, he is probably the most important guy at Sherdog that you probably haven't heard of. And I've only met Mike twice in my life, and Mike's a guy that I talk to, if not every day, every other day in some fashion or another, because, I mean, he makes Sherdog online. He makes sure that it's not the 404 error found. He's the guy that really is kind of the life force of Sherdog, and again, a man I've only met twice.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're, it sounds like we all have something in common. Shut-ins who are addicted to mixed martial arts. Yeah, Chris and I.
Good like that. The internet is great for making people who have social anxiety disorder money.
Yeah. My co-host Chris and I actually have never hung out in real life. I'm in Chicago. He's in California. The internet's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Where in California is Chris?
Oh, hey, TJ. I am in Ventura. It's about an hour outside of the San Fernando Valley, in between Santa Barbara and San Fernando Valley.
Perfect. I've been all around California. I've not been to Ventura yet. Although my governor
you're missing
was
out.
Reportedly billed as being from Ventura, but he wasn't. My former governor, Jesse Ventura.
The body. But, I wanted to ask you, take you back a little bit. When and why did you originally get into the sport of mixed martial arts?
I was a pro wrestling head. I enjoyed pro wrestling very, very much, and a buddy of mine and I went to our local Hollywood Video to go rent some WrestleMania or Royal Rumble or something. And when we got there, the selection was pretty sparse, and I suggested that we get one of these Ultimate Fighting videos. And he said, "Which one should we get?" And I said, "I don't know. Coming from the pro wrestling world, I suggested something with Tank Abbott and Ken Shamrock. We found one that they were both on the same card. That was Ultimate 96, and Tank Abbott knocked out Steve Nelmark in devastating fashion, and I, had the morbid curiosity perked, and we ended up renting every single Ultimate Fighting Championship that my Hollywood Video had, and I think the next one we got was whatever card had Frank Shamrock and Kevin Jackson on, and if you recall that fight, Frank armbarred Kevin Jackson in something like 20 seconds, and I was like, oh my goodness, that dude just did something that I don't know what he did, but he made that other guy quit. And the other guy looked a hell of a lot more badass than Frank Shamrock. So I kind of got hooked through the jiu-jitsu game there, and that's how my love of mixed martial arts got sparked, and it's been a downward spiral ever since.
Yeah, I feel you, man. I'm a late bloomer. By the way, this is Chris again. I don't know if you can tell our voices apart, but
I can.
I'm Jake.
Significantly quieter.
Okay, very, very good. I got in late. I think the first full card that I ever watched was UFC 70, and I watched that on Spike. And then after that, watched the IFL, and it's been downhill, like you say, ever since. And I just kind of wanted to say that journalism in mixed martial arts, there's a lot of people out there that put their opinion out, and obviously it's the internet. You can have your own opinion, and there's this storm that comes after them where, let's say Quentin Jackson hears that someone said something and calls him out for it, like Ariel Helwani. How do you feel about journalism as a whole when it comes to mixed martial arts? It's a very sensitive, touchy subject. You have this ability to put your opinion on something, and then you have these guys who are alpha males who kind of come back and, either bite you in the ass, or you have all these fans that bite you in the ass, or they love it. As a journalist, how does that feel to, just take something and look at it and give your opinion on it, and it has this huge, huge impact? What does that feel like?
Well, you mentioned that this is a sport full of alpha males, and I'll agree with you. Anybody that can go into a cage or a ring and essentially put their lives on the line for the entertainment of others, that's pretty manly stuff. That said, fighters are by far the most sensitive athletes in the entire world. If who's the guy? John Clayton on ESPN said something about Tom Brady and it hurt Tom Brady's feelings. Tom Brady's not going to go after John Clayton. That's not necessarily the case in MMA. And I think the reason that it's like that is mixed martial arts was pretty much dead when it came to coverage in the mainstream media. And the only reason that anybody knew about anything regarding mixed martial arts was because of websites back in the day like the Underground Forum, Sherdog.com, MMA Weekly, guys that, went out of their way and essentially lost money covering the sport of mixed martial arts. And, fighters are not much different than fans. At least most of them are not much different than fans in their passion and love for the sport. So a lot of fighters that, fight at the highest level still look at sites like Sherdog and MMA Fighting and MMA Junkie and Weekly just to get their fill of MMA coverage. So they sort of attach to the journalists themselves because, as big as mixed martial arts is with The Ultimate Fighter and Spike TV getting Bellator and World Series of Fighting, and there's a lot of MMA coverage out there, but still it's a niche group of people, and it's a niche group of people that make the sport, known to the hardcores that cover it. And I think that fighters, are still somewhat fans and have no problem approaching journalists if they say that or feel that something's wrong. The only problem, I think, is a lot of fighters take things, far too sensitive, and I think that sort of breeds, I don't want to say biased journalism, but I don't think a lot of people speak their mind at times because they're afraid, if I say something bad about this fighter, then maybe he won't deal with me going forward. So, I respect people that call it like it is. I mean, I have no problem if I feel some way about a fighter and, maybe if he heard that, they would be offended. I have no problem saying it because, if they're offended, that's on them. I'm not saying anything to be offensive. I'm just saying, this is how I feel, and if that's how I really feel, I shouldn't have to, sugarcoat it in any form. This is a sport. Some guys are great, some guys aren't. Some guys have been great, and they turn out that they aren't later in life. Just because I critique a fighter's, skill set or critique a fighter's game plan, that doesn't mean I'm critiquing the person. And yeah, there are stories sometimes where we do critique a human being's, personality. And, I think I said some things about Jason Miller recently on a show with Bruce Buffer, and I think I did so on Beatdown. And I actually got some emails going, "You're really hard on Jason." It's like, am I hard on Jason? I'm just, if I hurt Jason's feelings, that's on him. Maybe you shouldn't go on Ariel Helwani's show and act like that. Maybe he's not well. Maybe he needs to seek some psychiatric evaluation and attention and change up his meds. But, that's my opinion. I don't really consider his feelings on that. And I think some other people do. And I'm not saying that I'm, the big badass in media and MMA media, sharing my opinions on things like that, because I don't think that I'm, by far even close to the top of someone who speaks their mind. But I just think that there's more of this journalists, quote unquote, in mixed martial arts worrying about fighters' feelings when I don't think that necessarily should be the case. But that's how it is. Sorry for this long-winded answer, but I think media in mixed martial arts is. Yeah, media in mixed martial arts is far different from any other sort of sports media, and I think it's because it's the internet. And that's another thing. You guys are doing a show on Ustream. This is something that wasn't available just a few years ago, and the line between fan and journalist has blurred tremendously. And I think it's a good thing because information spreads so quickly on the internet, and the more that people are proactive, the more that information is going to get spread, and I think that's what we're all about. I mean, look at people's smartphones and tablets. I mean, news that hits the internet. I mean, it's people know about it so quick. I mean, a story gets posted, and 5 minutes later, hundreds of thousands of people know about it. And I just think it's a great time to be a fan, but also a great time to be someone who's proactively trying to cover and tell the story.
Beautifully put, sir. Beautifully put. I fancy myself a logical, even keel person who can think for themselves, and it's kind of crazy to think that if I put my opinion out there, it's going to be judged. Obviously, that's our times, with the internet, and like you're saying, these guys are so sensitive. It's like if I go out there and say, Quentin Jackson, you looked like dog shit in your last fight, he could probably hunt me down and kill me, and that's just ridiculous. I mean, having an opinion these days, it's so sensitive.
I get that, but, the thing is about that is Quentin Jackson's a professional fighter. And by the way, he's the first person I ever interviewed in mixed martial arts. But, Quentin's a guy that, he's sensitive, but, any other sports figure like that wouldn't come after you, because really, if a guy like Quentin Jackson, if he we're using him hypothetically here, if you offend him and it drives him crazy enough for him to go out and start talking about you like he has comments for Chael Sonnen, all he's doing is driving publicity your way. And say you're a mid-level guy or an entry-level guy in MMA media, all he's doing is making you get more Twitter followers, making people find out who you are, and once they find out who you are and they figure out that you're somewhat polarizing, they're going to keep coming back. So, I mean, if a fighter really was upset with a journalist or a fan or anybody about their comments, the best thing they can do is just not acknowledge it.
I think you're absolutely right. You sound like a very logical, person with, it seems like you have your shit together, obviously. I think you do. And I just wanted to ask you, as far as us young upstarts go, is there anything you could say to the people out there that want to get involved with journalism, that want to be involved with MMA as a fan, as a fanatic, as I am and as Jake is? Is there any kind of advice you could give us? I mean, without obviously giving us your trade secrets, just some basic advice.
I'll do my best without disseminating seminal documents. Looking at media now, you just have to go for it. You just have to go do it. If you have a solid opinion on something, focus on giving your opinion. I made it in radio before I made it in mixed martial arts, and I don't know if I've really necessarily made it. I'm lucky enough to do this every day, day in and day out, so I guess that's making it. But, when I was on the FM here in Minneapolis, I started when I was 15 interning, and then I was on the air at 16, 17, just because I knew how to be formatical. It was A, B, and C. Here is, that was, this is, you're listening to. And, I found my strength was keeping the flow going, and I turned that into a job in MMA. I mean, if you listen to the early beatdowns with myself and Josh Gross, I was nowhere on the level of, insight or knowledge that Josh has, and I'm still not on the level. Josh is a great MMA mind, and but I complimented Josh. The reason why Josh and I worked so well is because he was really, really smart, but he wasn't, I don't want to say that Josh was socially awkward, but he was broadcasting awkward. He wasn't able to say, hi, I'm Josh Gross, this is Beatdown, this is what we're going to do. That was my job, and I was able to keep the flow going and drive the bus, if you will. And, to also to that extent, I was pretty good at production. I think I'm still decent at production and imaging. I know how radio works, and that's been my passion since I was, essentially a little kid. If you're going to make it in this business, you got to find out what you're good at, and you got to practice, and you got to keep going, and you got to keep going. I deal with a lot of people that come through the SRN that want to be interns or call screeners, and at this point, man, like I don't even hire people that are going to radio school. Like all I'll do is hire MMA fans that have somewhat of a passion for it, because you don't need to go to school for broadcasting. You don't. Either you have it or you don't. It starts with a passion. It starts with a fire, and you just got to feed it. You got to go for it, and you just get better over time. I've never done television before. I started doing play-by-play and doing fights. I don't think I'm that good at it, but, I'm good enough to do, 4 Tachis a year in Lemoore, California, and call really good fights with Ian McCall and other guys that have, moved on to the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And, it's a time where you're rewarded for just trying. And I don't want to sound cliche and be like Thomas the Tank and go, I think I can. But, as long as you keep trying, you're going to get opportunities, and it's up to you what you do with those opportunities.
I appreciate the insight, good sir. I really do. It means a lot, and I'm going to go back and listen to this verbatim. Thank you very much, man. And
no problem.
Jake, you definitely have some follow-ups. I know I do too.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, it's funny you mentioned Ian McCall. We had him on a couple months ago. Great interview. We kind of wanted to get into hearing your opinions on current MMA topics, and the thing I've seen talked about more than anything else the last week and a half or so is the Jones-Sonnen matchup with the Ultimate Fighter. A lot of people are on one side of the fence or another, saying that they can't wait for it, and Jones-Sonnen is going to be amazing. I think just about everyone is pumped up for the hype that this fight's going to generate, but a lot of people kind of took issue with the fact that Sonnen's moving up from middleweight, coming off of a loss, and he's getting an immediate title shot when there are, really top flight guys in the 205-pound division that people think deserve the shot more. What is your take on all of this and Sonnen getting a immediate shot at the current champion, Jon Jones?
I don't think Chael does deserve a shot at Jon Jones, but let me ask you this. Who deserves it more than him?
Dan Henderson?
Okay. There's one more answer that might be acceptable, and it's Lyoto Machida.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Lyoto Machida already had his chance. Dan Henderson's 1-0, and he's barely 1-0 inside the UFC's light heavyweight division. A Henderson matchup, I would love it. I think it would be great. It's a legacy fight for Dan. If he was able to stop the young phenom, then that would be amazing. It would just add to the lore of Dan Henderson. I'm not too stoked for a Lyoto matchup. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where he was choked unconscious and just kind of made to look like a fool. Yeah, he took the first round from Jones, but not enough for me to really be all that excited for him to get another matchup. I wrote something about this on this topic in the Doggy Bag, which is available now at Sherdog.com, so I would suggest people check it out. But, I mean, if Alexander Gustafsson was, coming off a title eliminator win, then, yeah, I would be more upset about Chael Sonnen getting a title shot. But honestly, I just don't think that there's a lot of great opportunities sans Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson makes a lot of sense, but, he's not going to get his chance because, the UFC has a money-making fight. This fight's going to improve their bottom line. Their pay-per-view numbers haven't been very good. I don't know if it was confirmed. I heard a rumor that Silva Bonner did something in like the 350,000, 400,000 buys range. I don't know if that's true or not. Again, that's just something that I heard kicked around. If that's the case, I mean, the pay-per-view numbers haven't been great for the UFC for the last few months, for the last year for that matter. I mean, injuries after injuries for main event guys. I'm not going to be too mad at them if they're going to do a pay-per-view that's going to get them huge numbers, going to get them numbers similar to something along the lines of UFC 148. And like you said, people are excited for the hype. You should be. Chael is just upper elite level trash talker. Now, the sad part is the fight's probably not going to be that great, but people will convince themselves that, we've never seen Jon Jones on his back. What happens if Jon Jones is on his back? Chael Sonnen can probably put him on his back. We'll see what happens. Look, Jon looked a little bit vulnerable with that armbar from Vitor Belfort. Granted, Chael Sonnen's probably not going to armbar Jon Jones from the bottom, but we've seen a weakness in the manliness that is Johnny Bones Jones, and the hype should sufficiently sort of stoke the flame and the fire that people might not have to begin with to see Jones and Sonnen. But again, Dan Henderson would be great. Lyoto Machida is not all that awesome, and honestly, besides Alexander Gustafsson, I don't think there's a lot of guys that you can really say, oh, this is the fight that should be happening before Chael Sonnen.
Yeah, I am sure you heard the conference call with Jones and Sonnen, and by far my favorite moment was when Sonnen said he'd be in better shape than any of Jones' opponents, and Jones goes, on TRT or off TRT? And Sonnen goes, on TRT, next question, which I thought was an amazing response. But I kind of wanted to get your take on TRT within the game, kind of the most controversial topic, because it seems like if you're against it, you're almost saying, well, if you ever do steroids, then you shouldn't be allowed to compete at that top level. But if you're for it, it's kind of saying, well, you know, if you did do steroids, that's all right. Jones made the point during the conference call that he doesn't think it's fair, that he's a young guy, and he's going against a lot of older guys who are taking TRT to bring him back to that young age, and I kind of wanted to hear your take on that whole controversial issue of that.
My thoughts on testosterone replacement therapy are a little bit different than most, because you said if you're for TRT, then you probably have a different view on steroids. If you're against TRT, you probably hate steroids. I'm a little bit different. I'm against TRT. Simply because, first off, I think most guys are using some sort of substance to get ahead. I think everybody's using a substance to try to get ahead. Some of it's legal, some of it's not. Everybody who takes a supplement is trying to get an edge in some aspect. Jordan Breen, one of our colorful personalities on Sherdog and the SRN, he has a interesting correlation between people trying to use supplements and steroids to people getting LASIK eye surgery. If you have LASIK and it takes effect the way it's supposed to, you have superhuman sight. So why aren't we crying foul when people have this amazing vision due to laser eye surgery? But if you're going to cheat, in my opinion, if you're doing TRT, you are cheating. If you're going to cheat, I want you to be a cheater. I don't want you to go get a doctor's note and say, oh, look, I can take steroids because my testosterone level is out of whack. If you're going to cheat, I think there should be an inherent risk to it. I think you should be getting your steroids from a seedy person, that probably also sells methamphetamine. And that's the thing. A lot of people don't realize that steroids are bought from drug dealers. Steroids are a drug. It's an illegal substance. You can't just go to the store and buy it. And in my opinion, I don't want anyone to cheat. I don't really like people cheating. It's not good for the sport. I want it to be as much of an athletic contest as possible. But that said, when you're going to a doctor and saying, oh, look, my TE ratio is out of whack, I need help, all you're doing is getting a doctor's note to cheat. And I like my cheaters to be risk takers and cheaters. And, when they're busted, they're held to the fire and, basically criticized. And that mark will follow you forever. But now you have guys that are using testosterone replacement therapy, getting all the benefits of cheating, but they're not really cheating. I'm not going to say names, but there are guys that I've heard that are using TRT, but it's just like, what are you doing? Like, you're not old. I hear, radio spots for things like isitlowt.com, and, if you're really suffering from the effects of having low testosterone, like, you don't have a sex drive, you don't have the will to get up, you're definitely not going doing jiu-jitsu in the morning and wrestling at night. I don't understand how, guys can honestly say, look, I'm in this phenomenal shape, I have phenomenal motivation to compete with the best athletes in the world, but my testosterone range is off, and I need it just so I can be a functional human being and a regular male. It just doesn't make sense to me. This is a young man's sport. Every sport is a young man's sport. Once your testosterone levels don't work, that means you probably shouldn't be fighting anymore. And I know that's maybe disparaging someone like Chael Sonnen, who puts on some of the best fights in UFC history, at least popularity-wise. It maybe is downplaying some of the later accomplishments to a guy like Dan Henderson's career. But honestly, when the sun sets, I think it should be nighttime for some of these guys. I don't understand. The thing that bothers me the most about mixed martial arts, or really about any sport in general, is nowadays you need a nutritionalist, you need a personal trainer, and you need a chemist. You need a scientist to get you ready for fights. And I think that the fighting technique and preparation should be science enough. I don't think we should actually be breaking down chemicals and syringes and basically doing half your training camp in a laboratory.
You know, TJ, I agree with you 100%. I think that your points are absolutely valid. I see it, man. Like guys like Todd Duffy getting TRT replacement when he's 24 years old. What is that? You know what I mean? And these guys go out there and, like you said, they have a chemist and all these trainers. I have a different take, personally. I feel that ultimately, it's kind of a null and void point simply for the fact that you can go to a local GNC and pick up Nas-X Gorilla Fuck, which is some kind of chemical, you know, that you can buy legally, and it's slightly molecularly different than a steroid. So you can still go to a GNC, picked up a bottle, and it's essentially it's very similar to a banned substance, except it's a couple molecules different. So I feel that if you can do that, if you can go to a GNC, pick up a supplement that is very close to any steroid and still use that without getting popped, well, then what's the point? What's the issue?
Right. I don't mean to cut you off, but about 3 or 4 years ago, Jordan had Jeff Munson on his show, and Jeff was very open about his steroid use in the past, and he was like, you know, why should I spend more money on supplements that don't work when I can just go buy steroids and I know they work? I mean, think about that. You know, fighters pay, and just general people who work out pay tons of money to try to replicate the effects of steroids, when really all you need to do is go get some steroids. They work better, they're cheaper.
I agree, and ultimately, I think that just to kind of cap off my opinion, I really personally, I'm kind of the middle ground between you and Jake. I don't care what you put in your body. I really don't feel that it makes a difference, because mixed martial arts is a multifaceted, fight game. You have the mental side, physical, you have your training, and if you pump a bunch of horrible substances in your body, it's going to take a bad effect. And just because you're big or bloated or you recover faster doesn't mean you're going to be better than anyone else. I feel that technique reigns supreme, and that's why I think that steroids, personally, they don't bother me. I don't care. I really don't care about them. I feel that they aren't.
My thing about it is honestly, I think that pretty much everyone is using something. When a fighter gets popped, I don't really think that they're cheaters and hate it forever. I mean, yeah, they're cheaters, but, you know, again, my big thing is if you're going to cheat, I really want you to be held accountable for it. I think it's just really kind of lame that guys are getting testosterone replacement therapy and therapeutic use exemptions when, I mean, you know, who's really saying that they need them? You know, what doctor? I mean, it goes back to a guy like Alistair Overeem who went in front of the Nevada Athletic Commission with Dr. Hector Molina, and, you know, the background about Dr. Molina was just ridiculous, and, you know, his testimony saying, you know, things as like, oh, I didn't really know what was going on, I've done this before. I mean, he just sounded like, I could have done a better job sounding like a doctor than Hector Molina that day. And, I mean, it just sort of, that put a face to me, to the doctors that were, you know, saying that you need this steroid, you need this therapeutic use stuff, when, I mean, I don't know. Wellness doctors, man, I don't know. It doesn't seem like they really are doctors to a certain extent. It just seems like they have the right paperwork and they'll give the fighters whatever they want to. Joe Riggs was on Beatdown, you know, 5 or 6 years ago with myself and Josh Gross, and, you know, talked about his painkiller addiction, and basically he just said that he went into a doctor after having back surgery or before back surgery, one of the two, and you know, just told the doctor he was having back pain, and the doctor was almost a fan. It's like, hey, okay, how much pain meds do you want? And that sort of, you know, the availability of pain medicine sort of set Joe Riggs off into a downward spiral of painkiller addiction, and, you know, he got over that and defeated that. But I mean, there are a lot of guys that will fawn over fighters that are doctors that will just give them whatever they want.
Yeah, Jordan. That's a really shifty subject. You know, a point that I made Kaiser talking about. You know, 1 in 500 fighters need the exemption. Well, what about the 499 who don't? But I feel like we could talk about TRT all day. There's a couple topics I still wanted to broach before we let you go. We were talking about Jones, who was talking about Sonnen and his use of TRT. A couple years back, the fight everyone was clamoring for was GSP Silva, and I don't know if now it's a matter of out of sight, out of mind. GSP's been on the rack for far over a year now. If it's the fact that people kind of realize that the size difference is a lot less between Silva and Jones than it is between Silva and George St. Pierre. Even though Silva says he wants George next, it seems like most fans are clamoring a lot more for that Anderson Silva-Jon Jones fight than the Anderson Silva-George St. Pierre fight. Do you think we'll ever see Anderson Silva take on Jon Jones?
No, I don't think so. I just don't think that Anderson Silva is a legit 205-pound fighter. I mean, he's blown up a little bit. People talk about, his size. He walks around heavier than 205, so he I don't know. My opinion is, and I've always said this, that if you're going to fight in a division, you're going to fight for a title, and if Anderson Silva fought Jon Jones at 205 pounds, there's no reason that title wouldn't be on the line, that you need to establish yourself in that division. And wins over Forrest Griffin, Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner, and James Irvin is not a ledger that gets you a title shot. The most impressive win out of that is Forrest Griffin. I'm not interested in it. I think that if you're going to make a fight like that, I think it's the fight to make is GSP against Anderson Silva. And obviously George has to take care of Carlos Condit coming up next month. But really, in my opinion, the size, there's a big size difference between Jon Jones and Anderson Silva. And I think that there's far less of a size difference between GSP and the middleweight champ and the Spider. And, if those guys are going to fight, I think that we're more likely to see the better, more refined, technical fighter win than we are against Anderson Silva and Jon Jones. And I think that's why Anderson Silva is honestly saying, hey, I'd rather fight George. I'm not going to fight Jon Jones because it's a better matchup for him to fight George. And that said, I think George beats Anderson at 185, but, hopefully we find out. But I just, I got a lot of ire for talking about me wanting Anderson Silva GSP over Jon Jones and Anderson Silva on our recent edition of Beat 10 After the Bell on the Sherdog Radio Network. And, people were really up in arms about my sort of disinterest in Jones and Silva. And I don't think it would be that great of a fight. I think that if Jon Jones took Anderson down, which I think he can, that he would just kind of, maybe not necessarily destroy him, but really kind of have his way with him on the floor. And, I don't need to see that to believe it. I already believe that. And, maybe I'm one of the odd few that aren't really interested in that fight at all. But I think, the people that want to see Anderson Silva against Jon Jones are more, looking at a way that Anderson can be beat. And I don't like it. That's not interesting to me. I would much rather see him fight George St. Pierre because that's just a fight that makes more sense. George has been on top, essentially just as long as Anderson has in the UFC. Jon Jones is still coming up. He's done a lot at 205 pounds, already tying Chuck Liddell's record of title defenses, or already tying Chuck Liddell. I think Tito's still ahead of him, but really, Jon is still improving. George is already established and has cemented himself as the best welterweight in the world. I think that Jon Jones probably is the best light heavyweight in the world, but that's still a little more of a subjective argument than Anderson being the best middleweight and George being the best welterweight. Why don't we let the two best fighters of their divisions in all of history of the Ultimate Fighting Championship square off? And, again, this all hinges on George beating Carlos Condit, but, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, and especially if Silva's camp has their way and George beats Condit and the next fight slated is St. Pierre versus Silva, do you think that's kind of unfair to the challengers at welterweight and middleweight? We have Hendricks taking on Campman upcoming at UFC 154. We have both Weidman Boach and Belcher Okami the end of the year at UFC 155. Bisping's also been outspoken probably his entire career, but recently about getting that title shot. What do you say to those challengers who have worked their ass off for a number one spot, and then GSP takes a year and a half off, and then after one title defense would theoretically move up and fight that super fight against the Brazilian Anderson Silva?
Yeah, it's more of a debacle at 85 because I think Tim Boach and Chris Weidman clearly deserve a shot at Anderson. Whoever wins that fight definitely deserves to get their shot at the champ. At 170 pounds, I mean, George has basically said if he moves up to 85, that's where he's going. So he would vacate that title. And, I think that there are more, worthy, challengers, a guy like Johnny Hendricks, Martin Kampman, one of those guys I think would be really solid to fight George. But, I mean, if George is going to move up to 85, you have a vacant title there, and whoever, if Joe Silva wants to put together, a four-man tournament or something to crown a champ, that would be fine. Weidman and Boach definitely need to fight Anderson Silva, but, if George is going to move up too, that's another thing. He basically said that he wants to do it right. He wants to, walk around heavier, put on more muscle, and really be a true 185-pound fighter when he does fight Anderson Silva. So, I mean, if that fight happens, I think we're waiting another year. And I have no problem with that, because I think if George is really going to move up, he should be a fighter who's very comfortable in his skin. And to do that, he's going to have to put on more muscle, change his dietary habits, and just become a heavier human being. So I don't really see a problem in the sense that we're really tabling challengers to fight for a title. But if it did happen, it would be a shame for guys in particular, Tim Boach and Chris Weidman.
Yeah, for sure. One last topic I want to broach with you before we let you go. Dana White came out just yesterday and finally gave a definitive answer on women's MMA in the UFC, said that it's absolutely going to happen. I was actually talking with Chris about this before you called in, and I'll pose the same question to you, which I was talking to Chris about, which is, obviously Rousey and Cyborg are the main two figures in women's mixed martial arts now, and a fight between them is definitely going to happen sometime down the road. But when do you think we'll see a women's division in the UFC? And B, it kind of seems like Rousey and Cyborg, sort of like Jones and Silva have been doing. No one's looked like they've had a shot against them. Cyborg's got a slew of early first-round knockouts. Rousey has a slew of early first-round submissions, and the way they're dominating, their competition, do you think it's really feasible long-term to bring women's mixed martial arts into the UFC?
I think it is. I mean, you look at what Invicta's doing, look what Strikeforce has done with Ronda Rousey, and they have some other talent. I mean, Sarah McMahon is going to be a force to be reckoned with at one point, if she's not already, to be honest. So I think that the long-term viability of women's mixed martial arts is there. It just needs to be bred a little bit more and sort of nursed until it gets, to this full-fledgling self-sufficient status for the UFC to bring it in. It's just funny. I mean, Dana was a guy who was pretty adamant about women's mixed martial arts not being, something that he enjoyed, something that he was interested in. And then, all of a sudden, here comes Ronda Rousey, and his mood has changed. Ronda's at almost every UFC event. I mean, hell, she was in Minneapolis a few weeks ago, and I had no idea why she was there. But I mean, that's her thing is to go to all the UFCs, and Dana's right there and is promoting her, and finally switched his tune and said, yeah, it's going to happen. So I'm happy for women's mixed martial arts because I've been following women's MMA since I got into this sport, as a fan, and I trained with Kelly Cobold for a while, and saw her fight, all the way up until she fought Gina Carano, and her passion for women or for mixed martial arts was just as fiery and as vibrant as all her male counterparts, and so I got my sort of firsthand experience in women's mixed martial arts through her, and I drove to Evansville, Indiana, to see a hook and shoot show that had nothing but all women on the card, and meeting people like Tara LaRosa and Sarah Kaufman. Women's mixed martial arts, I think, is definitely something that the UFC can market. But I don't know, I just kind of giggle when I think about Dana's remarks on women's MMA in the past. When will we get a full, 100% division inside the UFC? I don't know. I mean, it's up to the UFC if they want to try to establish a division before they put Cyborg and Rousey on. If Cyborg and Rousey is going to take place, would it happen in Strikeforce? I mean, that's a whole other question. When's Strikeforce just going to go away? If it happened tomorrow, it won't be soon enough, in my opinion. But I don't know. They're going to have to look at it because that's the thing. They can't they can't, be one and done. They can't put on Rousey and Cyborg in the UFC and then just have the division go away. I mean, if they're going to have Rousey and Cyborg fight on a card, then they got to have, another fight, whether it's on television or whether it's, in the prelims that, establish another contender for the winner of that fight. Because, I mean, the UFC is all about telling stories, and if you don't have a second-hand storyline in women's mixed martial arts to move to the front of the line after Rousey and Cyborg, you're going to, get all this interest in the first women's mixed martial arts bout in the UFC, and it's all going to go out the window as soon as someone wins, whether it would be Rousey, whether it would be Cyborg. And, they got to make sure that they don't, pardon the metaphor, shoot their load in one, effort. They gotta make it sustain and make it, long lasting. And, that's going to be the hardest thing in promoting women inside the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
TJ, you have been a fantastic guest. Honestly, to be quite honest, fantastic with all your breakdowns. I've been listening the entire time, just captivated.
I hope you were listening the entire time.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't listening the entire time.
There's a reason why you have been as successful as you have, and I just wanted to kind of end with a question that we ask
easy
all of
now.
our
Remember
guests.
what I said about journalists in the sport being too nice to their subjects? Come on, man.
Yes.
Screw you, TJ.
Hey, TJ, eat my butt.
All right, that was a little ridiculous. But
Whoa.
No. We ask all of our guests, what is your favorite ice cream? Now, Chris Lieben is bubblegum. Charlie Brenneman is vanilla. I think Ian McCall was chocolate mint. What is TJ DeSantis' favorite ice cream?
I would say Uncle Creepy and I have something in common. I'm kind of a peppermint bonbon kind of guy. That said, my favorite ice cream treat would be a Snickers ice cream bar. If you would let me go with the Snickers ice cream bar, I would go with that. But if I had to go like straight up ice cream in an ice cream cone, it would be mint chocolate chip, which I enjoyed about 20 minutes before coming on the program with you gentlemen.
Fantastic.
Oh, nice. Yo, thank you so much for coming on. You're extremely well-spoken, kind of like when we had John Anik on a month or two ago. It sounded like we would ask him a question, and he would have a 2-paragraph, prepared statement, rolls off the tongue perfectly. You were kind of the same way. Obviously, you can check TJ out, Sherdog.com, Beatdown After the Bell, which I, I actually listen to after just about every fight as long as I'm not out at the bar. I think I called in pretty upset about Diaz Condit a year or so ago. Beatdown After the Bell, the doggy bag. Did you have any other plugs or shout-outs you wanted to put out there?
I'll just go down the list of all of our programs because I think everything in the SRN is worthwhile listening to. I host a show called Beatdown. It comes up Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from noon to 3 p.m. Pacific time, or scratch that, Central time, 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific time. Time zones are just a pain in the ass. And then on Tuesdays, I do a show with Bruce Buffer called It's Time. That starts up at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Jordan Breen show happens various times on Tuesdays and Thursdays. More often than not, the Breen Show are Cheap Seats. That's what it's called now. With Greg Savage and Jordan Breen is Tuesdays and Thursdays from noon to 2 Pacific time. I think the greatest show in MMA radio happens on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. We call it the SRN Rewind with Jack Incarnacio. He gets very, very in-depth and thorough in breaking down the sport on a week-in and week-out basis. And the Rewind is home to the Sunday Night Sit-Down, which is a long-form interview with various guests throughout the MMA world. This week, part 2 of a Frank Shamrock interview takes place, where Frank gets very candid about his relationship with his brother Ken, his time with Elite XC and his time with Strikeforce, and about with alcoholism. Very, very good stuff on the Rewind. Check that out this Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. You all will always follow me on Twitter. I'm at TJ DeSantis. Follow the SRN on Twitter at Sherdog Radio, and follow the global authority in mixed martial arts. Sherdog.com is on Twitter at Sherdog.com spelled out.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I probably listened to about 90% of those programs, and they're all top notch. I really enjoy it. Maybe one day we can have you back on. Thank you so much for coming on with us, man.
No, my pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank
Have
you,
a good one.
TJ. You as well.
And, TJ DeSantis from the Sherdog Radio Network. TJ DeSantis, that's spelled TJ-DESANTIS. That was a really fun interview.
Fun, very well put. He was well spoken, concrete, to the point. Had a lot to say. I enjoyed the hell out of him.
And that's
awesome.
That's one thing I really like about TJ. A lot of these journalists out there. I don't know why I slurred the word journalists. A lot of these will kind of mince words, kind of play it safe. They won't exactly speak their mind, especially if they have kind of a controversial topic on their mind. But TJ does, he really rides that line between not mincing words and telling like it is, but he's not douchey, because you have a lot of journalists who will mince words and just kind of only talk positives about people, and then you have a whole other slew of people who are just straight out douchey, who will insult fighters, and TJ will criticize you if he feels you need to be criticized, but he never really digs down and personally attacks anyone. I told him I compared him to John Anik. He, very, very well spoken, and I'll probably call in wasted after UFC in a month or two and be like, "Hey, DJ, can you call on my show? I don't think Conant should won that decision, man. I don't like that decision."
Yeah, TJ surprised the hell out of me. I didn't know what to make of him, because ultimately I've never listened to a single program on Sherdog, to be honest. And to have him on the show, and
I'm a Sherdog junkie.
He had constructive criticism, and that's rare.
Yeah.
When you have criticism, like, most of the time it comes off as, they just want to get their 2 cents in. But TJ kind of had that take where he really just put it out there, and he had a very well thought out, well defined opinion, and I have a lot of respect for that man.
Very much so.
That was fantastic.
Yeah. Definitely check him out on Sherdog. Beatdown After the Bell. My 2 go-tos after a fight are Beatdown After the Bell and the actual post-fight press conference, which recently the UFC's been dropping the ball on. The audio's been absolutely horrible. I think something like 6 minutes into the last press conference, there was this giant buzz that if I had my speakers turned up to basically anything above 50, it would have blown them out. Beatdown After the Bell, all the programs that he shouted out, definitely check him out. We were kind of talking about the women's division before TJ called up, and it's something we actually broached with him. Something else that popped up recently was Miesha Tate calling out Bellator. She was very, very unhappy with the fact that Bellator CEO Bjorn Rebney kind of snubbed Zoila Gurgel, said that, or she didn't say that Bjorn cut her off the televised portion, but he did do that. I'm looking up a article now, so obviously I'm stammering like an idiot. But
basically, Tate said that Bellator has kept Gurgel in the dark.
I have the quote now. The quote is, which I was looking this up, which is why I just sounded like a stammering idiot. I cannot believe Bellator would allow its champion to be placed on the untelevised undercard in her hometown. A champion is a champion, regardless if she's fighting up a weight. You use her image to promote the posters, and then put her on the undercard. Blows my mind. This is the second time, too, you've done this. This I tell you that I would rather never fight MMA again than fight for you under Bellator MMA banner. The amount of disrespect you've given Zoila Gurgel is disgusting. Definitely not mincing words. Bjorn Rebney kind of came back and gave the only answer he could, kind of like, well, she's coming off an injury, so we don't want to pump her. That's a horrible excuse. And it's always fun seeing seeing people, especially people we've had on the podcast before, come on and rip people and be newsworthy, so we can talk about them and mention that they came on the MMA podcast.
Absolutely, it is disgusting. I put up with that myself at work. I have worked my butt off the last 6 months, and to no avail. I mean, I literally do everything in my power to do everything right, and it doesn't get noticed. And I think that that's a good parallel to Miss Zoila Gershel. She has looked fantastic in Bellator, done really well, promoted on the poster, doesn't get pushed by the company. It's a travesty. It's disgusting, and I completely agree with Misha Tate. I think that Bjorn should be disgusted with himself.
Yeah, and a few more topics to broach before we shut it down, and probably half an hour around there. If you want to call in, I know we've got our boy Ramses, who said he was going to call in this week about Big Nog Herman, calling it a work.
Don't be scared, homie.
Don't be scared, homie.com. I actually went on and watched the fight. I'll wait until later, see if Ramses calls up. If not, I'll talk about it toward the back end of the podcast. Some definitely interesting moments. I'm not sure if it was a work, but yeah, I'm interested to hear him call in and talk to us about that. We want to talk about a couple fight announcements made for UFC 155 first, though. We had a couple of lighter weight guys get matched up in that end of the year card for December 29th. The first one of which is actually kind of ridiculous. It's tentatively scanned. Jesus Christ, what am I saying today? It's tentatively planned to be a preliminary fight, not even on the pay-per-view card, even though it could be a bantamweight title eliminator. We have Eric Koch fighting Ricardo Lamas. Koch 13-1, 2-0 in the UFC, hasn't fought since September 2001, was originally slated to fight Jose Aldo at UFC 153 before he had to pull out due to injury, was replaced by Frankie Edgar, who's going to wait for Jose Aldo to come off his injury from being in a motorcycle accident, injuring his foot. So most people think that Eric Koch is going to have the next title shot, granted that he actually was matched up against champion Jose Aldo. You have Ricardo Lamas, who's coming off a pretty big upset. He was a big underdog against Hatsuhioki, who a lot of people thought deserved a shot against Jose Aldo. Turned it down, which is just another example of why you don't turn down title shots, because 12-2 Lamas, who's 3-0 in the UFC, marched in there, and Lamas didn't just beat Hatsuhioki, he dominated Hatsuhioki, and both of these guys not really well known, at least for the mainstream mixed martial arts fan, and it's going to be really interesting to see who comes out of this, and we'll probably get the next shot against Jose Aldo or Frankie Edgar. I wouldn't, versus any other competition, I would assume that Jose Aldo wins. We don't really know with Frankie Edgar, a guy who's finally cutting weight, a guy who defeated huge names like Penn, Maynard. I'm looking forward to Aldo Edgar a lot, but first we're going to have Koch Lamas, as that Edgar Aldo fight still hasn't been, planned for a specific date. What do you think about this matchup between Eric Koch and Ricardo Lamas?
Well, I really feel that I think Koch has had a fantastic career under the Zuffa banner in the WC. He fared really well. He knocked out what was his name? I think it was Rivera with a head kick. He got dominated by Danny Castillo, but came back, had 2 wins. He's knocked out Junior Asuncao, and he decisioned Jonathan Brookins, and I think that that's a very underwhelming UFC career. The fact that he got that initial Jose Aldo title shot at 145, I was one of those people that's like, he really doesn't deserve it. Ricardo Lamas, on the other hand, has looked fantastic in the UFC. He knocked out Matt Grice in stunning fashion. He choked out Cub Swanson, who's now on a 3-fight win streak with 3 KOs, and then he dominated Hatsuhioki, who is the perennial number 2 in the division. So I think Lamas is going to absolutely have his way with Eric Koch on Fight Night.
Yeah, I also kind of have the same line of thinking. Eric Koch has a few impressive wins on his record, but his top wins against Jonathan Brookins. Jonathan Brookins was at the top of the featherweight division at that point, but we don't really know where exactly he is, whether he's top 5, top 10, top 15 even. We fought Chad Mendez, and Mendez pushed him to a 30-27 decision across the board. Brookins is 1-2 at featherweight. He was really handled by Mendez when they fought at WEC 47 Bulls vs. Cruz. And Ricardo Lamas has really put together something impressive. Yeah, he did lose to Uriel Contra in the first round, but that was about two years ago. He's showing a lot of improvement. I think Hioki and Swanson are both top 5 guys in the division. Choked out Swanson, really grinded out Hioki to a win, and I think that Lamas will win this fight, and hopefully after the Edgar Aldo fight, get the winner of that. And they're scheduled for UFC 155. UFC 155, Jesus Christ, that's going to be an amazing card. Stacked. You have the heavyweight championship rematch between JDS and Velasquez. You have Forrest Griffin versus Phil Davis. You have the top middleweights fighting, both Weidman versus Boach, Belcher versus Okami. You have Gray Maynard, Joe Lauzon, the return of Chris Lieben from a suspension. Matt Mitrione's on the card. Michael Johnson's going to be fighting Miles Jury on that card, and another fight which I wanted to talk about, a fight that we actually proposed happened about a week and a half ago on the MMA Roundtable that I'm absolutely pumped for. 2 guys who probably the hardest hitters in the bantamweight division. These guys go out there looking for blood. You got the 22-6 Brad Pickett, who's 2-1 in the UFC. Wineland 19-8-1. He's actually only 1-2 in the UFC, but he's really fought top guys, coming off a win against Scott Jorgensen. He literally fought 2 of probably the top 3 guys in the bantamweight division at that point, taking losses to Uriah Faber and Joseph Benavidez, both by 3-round decision. God, that was maybe the most beautiful counterpunch I've ever seen in his June fight against Scott Jorgensen. Pickett is literally known as one punch, and yeah, this is going to be an all-out war of guys who love to throw.
Yes, that is a very astute breakdown. I agree. Let's look at these 2 guys. You got Pickett, who has a fantastic jiu-jitsu game. He's the only man to ever out-wrestle and dominate Demetrius Johnson on the ground in their fight. It was a 3-rounder. He absolutely put a beating on Demetrius Johnson, which says a lot considering that Dominic Cruz couldn't do it, Ian McCall couldn't do it, Joseph Benavidez couldn't do it. So I think Pickett has a fantastic ground game. And then you look at his last fight, he knocked out Yves the Tiger Jabouin with 1 punch.
Yves the Tiger.
The Chigo. Yeah. He knocked out Yves Jabouin with 1 punch. Looked fantastic in doing it. Choked out Damasio Page with the guillotine in the second round. So obviously Brad Pickett is no one to mess with. And I think that Eddie Wineland, we've had him on the show. He is fantastic. He's had an up and down career in the WC and the UFC. He obviously lost some decisions to Faber and Benavidez, but if you look at him as a whole, as his performance goes, he looked fantastic in those fights. Even though he lost, there's a lot to be said about his performance. He's tons of takedowns. He has excellent boxing, knockout power with 1 punch in both hands. So ultimately, I'm going with Brad Pickett in this one. I think Pickett finishes it by submission. I can't call the round, but I think Pickett will take it.
Yeah, his only couple losses in the past 5 fights coming to Henan Barao and Scott Jorgensen, and I really try and stay away from MMA math as much as possible. But the way Scott Jorgensen put it to Pickett and Wineland put it to Jorgensen, and that is the definition of MMA math. I'm completely guilty of it at this point. But I kind of think, Wineland just sort of the bigger guy. I believe Wineland has a few inches, if not a couple inches of, if not 1 inch that I'm checking now. Yep, 1 inch of height and reach. But, every single inch is crucial. You see that with Jon Jones fights.
You gotta use every inch.
every inch. I do use every inch. But, yeah, just I think overall Wineland is a better all-around fighter. And if anything, Wineland's been on our show and Pickett hasn't. So at least for that, I'm going to give the edge to Eddie Wineland. And
very good breakdown. I agree.
Great minds think alike, even though we disagreed on that.
Yep. But we still think alike. You can't take that away from us.
We think about poop a lot. Poop and Ronda Rousey, and both of those kind of mixed up sometimes. But enough about that. You want to move on to the 10 solid seconds of sports? Oh, let's do that. And go. UF crushes South Carolina 44-11. Detroit will face San Francisco in the World Series, but San Francisco is currently up 8-1 in the eighth inning right now. Fuck Gary Bettman. NFL season almost at the halfway mark. I timed that out. Man, I timed that out kind of perfectly. And also another segment we actually do on the MMA Roundtable, we have Fight Busters. It's MMA Mental. If you think you have an answer to this, tweet at MMA Mental. And definitely listen to their podcast with Ray and Patrick. They always have a lot of compelling interviews over there week in and week out. So a shout out to them, and Ray started this segment this past Monday on the Roundtable, and if you think you know the answer to any of these, tweet at the MMA Mental, like I just fucking said. Okay. And these are kind of clues, and you have to guess who the fighter is. Like, the best friend of Barbie holding a rock. That would be, who is the best friend of Barbie? Ken. What's a rock? Stone. UFC fighter Ken Stone. So he has 3 fight busters he gave out last week. The first one, the supporter of a backwards man. Initials are NP. That's actually one that I guessed on the Roundtable, but we aren't going to give any of these away. You got to figure it out yourself. It's the supporter of a backwards man. Initials are NP. The second one, a way to pay in Africa. That's a way to pay in Africa. The initials are CK. It's not Louis CK. The third one, jack a dude off with your feet. Oh, wait, no. Wipe your feet, then eat the meat. When he first said that on the Roundtable,
here we go.
I seriously thought he had said wipe your feet, then beat your meat. I'm like, dude. And
then you might get sick.
No, it's wipe your feet, then eat the meat, or you might be sick. Initials are MH, and I'll say that once more in Ray's silky voice, as good as I'll try. Wipe your feet, then eat the meat, or you might be sick. And the initials are MH. So yeah, if you think you know the answers to any of those, tweet at MMA Mental, or listen to the next episode of the Roundtable next Monday, and we'll be giving those away. Just a few more topics I want to get to before we close the doors on our 18th episode. We're talking about scheduled fights, so I'll kind of stick to that one. A fight that was announced today that, at first I thought, this is going to be a blowout, and then I was like, it could be a little close. I still don't think Little Nog has much of a chance with Rashad's stand-up in wrestling. But you got Rashad Evans, who's slated to take on Little Nog Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, and they haven't given a specific card yet, because the UFC actually doesn't have any cards scheduled yet for 2013. But, that'll probably be a pay-per-view. We'll probably see it at UFC 156 or 157. Evans versus Little Nog. What do you think about that?
Well, this is actually the first time I've heard about that. Is this official?
Yep. It is official. It is not officially on a card yet, as they don't have any announced cards.
Wow.
But Rashad Evans,
okay.
Rashad Evans is going to be taking on Little Nog. I think that's really a step down for Rashad Evans. The only guy that he's lost to since that horrible knockout against Lyoto Machida was Jon Jones. and arguably gave Jones his biggest test. Even though Machida and Belfort really tested Jones in the first round, both of them were ultimately finished by Jones, where Evans rode out the entire 25 minutes. Yeah, he didn't really have much of a chance once it got on to the later rounds, but he didn't get finished. Little Nog, I think, lies outside most people's top 10s for the light heavyweight division. But the two are slated to take each other on.
Wow, I hadn't heard of this fight. I think that's a good matchup. Here's my issue with this. Rashad, as much as I don't like him as a person, I think he's made a lot of excuses. I think he's fantastic at light heavyweight. Let's look at his losses. Knockout to Machida, loss at, a decision against Jon Jones. He's looked absolutely fantastic. Dominated Thiago Silva, dominated Rampage Jackson for 2 rounds, dominated Tito Ortiz, dominated Phil Davis. He's looked absolutely amazing. Little Nog, if you look at his career in the UFC, is very underwhelming. A knockout against Louise Kane, and then a win against Jason Brills that I thought that he lost. And
I thought it went the other way as well.
Yeah, and then a loss to Ryan Bader, a loss to Phil Davis, and then a win against Tito Ortiz. He obviously has a problem with wrestlers, and Rashad makes Ryan Bader and Phil Davis look like idiots. So I've got Rashad all day long in this fight. Unanimous decision win for Rashad.
Yeah, I actually would pick a unanimous decision as well, as Little Nog has lost his last 2 losses. He's 1-2 in his last 3 fights, both of them 3-round unanimous losses to Davis and Bader. Davis arguably got better between the Nog and the Evans fight, and Evans still dominated him. I feel the exact same way, but I actually think it'll be a finish. I think we'll see Rashad get his first finish. Actually, since beating Forrest Griffin to win the UFC light heavyweight championship, only one of his 4 wins have been a finish, and that was his fight against Tito Ortiz at UFC 133. Both him and Little Nog have that in common, a TKO victory against Tito in the last couple years. Yeah, I actually see. I won't necessarily call the round. Fuck it. Yeah, I will. Second round TKO. Both Little Nog and his brother Big Nog have iron chins, but I think Rashad Evans has really sharpened up his stand-up game. He's training with a lot of monsters over at the Black Zillions, a lot of striking specialists, including Vitor Belfort, Alistair Overeem, and that's probably done nothing but up his striking game.
So true. He hit that beautiful head kick in that first round. You remember that when Rashad hit that head kick and Jones went running back? You're actually absolutely right there.
No.
I just want to make a point about Little Nog. A lot of people say that he's a fantastic boxer, which I'm not going to disagree with. He is a good boxer. Here's the issue that I have with him. Every single fight, when he gets someone rocked and he smells blood, he starts throwing these wide hooks, and for MMA, it's perfect. Like, you're going to surprise them. They're not going to see it coming. But ultimately, for me, to call someone a great boxer and then they use 0 technique and wing power punches, I don't really like that. So I think that's the intangible for this fight. If at any point Rashad is hurt, which I'm sure he's going to get in this fight, Little Nog is going to throw those wild looping punches, and Rashad can reset and grab Lil Nogueira and drag him down. So that's why I think Rashad will win this fight. I think that both the Nogueira brothers have some fantastic skills, but when they sense blood, they throw their technique out the window, and that's just my take.
Definitely. And talking about Jones and that head kick he landed kind of segues good into our next topic. We'll try and keep it short because we did talk about the potential Anderson Silva Jon Jones matchup ad nauseum after UFC 153, but it was really interesting. Anderson Silva did kind of a 180. He was talking about, especially at the UFC 153 press conference, if you watched it, every time they asked him about Jones, he was physically shaking his head, waving his arms, no. But apparently now he's open to the idea of fighting Jon Jones at a catchweight. I don't necessarily know how much weight Jones can drop below 205. He's He's a huge 205-pounder. He has more reach than anyone in the weight class 60 pounds above him. Anderson's saying he will face Jones at a catch weight, which would obviously be a little closer to 205 pounds than 285. It would be at the least, it would either be 195 or 200. And I think part of that is both of them wanting to save face a little bit and not lose their championship belts. But, TJ says he never sees the fight happening. Maybe it's just the optimist in me. I actually see it happening, probably at a catch weight, especially with him coming out and talking, which kind of makes sense, with these super fights, whether it's Anderson GSP or Anderson Jones. It makes more sense for a catch weight fight because, if Anderson were to move up to 205 and take the belt from him, it's like, alright, so is Anderson, he's the 205-pound champ now. Is he going to keep defending it? What's going on there? People would give him flack if he went back down to middleweight. So I think a catch weight is the most logical option for those two super fights.
As much as I enjoyed the idea of a super fight early on in watching mixed martial arts, if I go back to the time where GSP and Anderson were reigning supreme, dominating all people, I thought it makes sense. But ultimately, I think catch weight super fights or any super fight makes no sense. You're taking two champions and you're pitting them against each other, and then there's going to be a winner and a loser, and the loser loses their aura of invincibility. And I don't like that. I think that we really shouldn't throw these amazing athletes against each other. I've kind of come to that conclusion the last week or so. I really don't think it makes too much sense for the promotion because, you're going to get a short payday. You're going to have GSP, Silva, or Silva Jones, and it's going to be this giant pay-per-view, monstrosity where it's like 1.5 million pay-per-views. And that's good for the business. But ultimately, as a sport, someone has to lose, and they're a champion. And at that point, every single person in that division is going to be pumped up. They're going to be like, yeah, I can get him now. I see his weakness. Yeah, so I think it's a lose-lose situation. It's kind of like BJ Penn versus GSP. BJ fought GSP, lost convincingly, and he went back to lightweight. And yes, he did win against the challengers, but ultimately I think that I think it's just not a good move, personally. I don't like it.
Yeah, the fights have got to happen at least for the fans' sake. It's sort of like with boxing. Pacquiao and Mayweather aren't naturally at the same weight, but they're controlling their divisions so hard. It's what everyone's clamoring for, and MMA's number one goal now isn't really to appease these fighters and protect the integrity of the belt, but it's to go mainstream. And for them to do that, they're going to need these amazing cards.
Yeah, I agree. I see the appeal to these big fights. You want to get people interested, excited, and pumped up for a UFC, which has been really hard this year with all these changes to the cards. But ultimately, I feel like it's a detriment to the sport if you have champion versus champion, simply for the fact that you're going to have someone that loses, like I said before, and that to me is priceless. Like, if someone loses, that's going to give the entire division, for the loser, just confidence. And is that a good thing? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and kind of on that, we'll put a bow on it. This Friday upcoming, we have Bellator 78. You got the welterweight semifinals. You have Mikhail Surev versus Lyman Good and Maria Zaromskis versus Andrei Koreshkov. You have a middleweight fight, Brian Rogers versus Dominique Steele. A featherweight fight, Daniel Strauss, who's been on a tear. He's taking on Alvin Robinson. And which, Tate gave him a lot of crap for it being in the prelims, but in the prelims you're going to have a women's strawweight fight, Zoila Gurgel versus Casey Noland, and those will all be very interesting. You can check the main card fights on MTV2, you can check the prelim fights on Bellator.com. I believe they have a stream up for this season, Season 7. Big shout out to our listeners. You have anything else to add in about this episode before I send her home?
It has been an absolute pleasure to have Marunde and DeSantis on.
Oh, those were awesome interviews.
Yeah, I'm really good guys.
I'm not really exaggerating at all. Those were two of my favorite interviews that we've had since we started doing that. So yeah, huge shout out to our listeners who keep us going. We love the positive comments, whether you comment on Ustream, comment on iTunes. Definitely subscribe to us on both of those channels. If you're listening to us now, we really appreciate getting those subscribe and download numbers. Huge shout out to those listeners. Obviously, like we mentioned a second ago, Bristol Marunde and TJ DeSantis, really fun talking to. And just out of the fun that I had talking to him, not for numbers or anything else, just I enjoy those conversations so much. I'd really love having them back on in the future. Visit us on Twitter at the MMA Podcast. Tweet at us. Visit us, themmapodcast.com. We've been a little lazy, or I've been a little lazy with the updates recently. The internship I'm doing up here in Chicago has gotten a little wild, but I'm going to really make a concerted effort to start putting more daily updates on that. You can check out the MMA Roundtable every Monday, and that's the show we do with MMA Mental, Ray and Patrick. Monday here on the same Ustream channel if you're listening to us live on Ustream. Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We also throw those up on our iTunes and YouTube channels as well if you want to check those out. And this podcast, the MMA Podcast with just Chris and myself, we do every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And I know we've been saying it just about every single week, but I think we're finally going to have Chivello on next week. He said he was moving this week, but should be open next week. Renzo Gracie, a legend of the sport, in a couple weeks. Joey Coco Diaz in about a month or so. Really looking forward to that interview, especially being a fan of the Rogan podcast. He's having a little baby soon, so he has Wednesday night baby classes. Once he's done with that, we'll have him on, and along with Nate Corey, who sadly in our last Blog Talk Radio episode, the lost episode 15.5, we had to tell him that we had to reschedule because the entire site was down. So we've been in contact with all four of those guys, all four of whom, Corey, Coco, Chiavello, and Henzo, have said they all really want to come on in the future. We plan on bringing them on for you. Yeah, a rant to start the podcast and end the podcast as usual. And until next Wednesday night, or next Monday night for the roundtable, next Wednesday night for this podcast, we gone.
We gone.